Good morning and welcome to Sierra Foothills Unitarian Universalist. I'm Amy Evans. Today I'm joined by members of the worship committee. Not the entire gang, but we have our chair, Meg Dorsey, and our board liaison, Suzanne Borth. We also have a reflection from our member, Jim Robeson. If you aren't familiar with the worship committee, our goal is to assist Reverend AJ in building meaningful services. Today is one of Reverend AJ's days off. He's usually in the pulpit about 3 times a month. When he's not here, members of the congregation typically lead us in worship, and sometimes we have guests. Today we are going to consider the meaning of worship and give thought to what it is we do here each Sunday. Sometimes it can be hard to explain how we do church when some of us are atheists, some of us are Buddhists, some of us are agnostic, and some of us are in categories that aren't really categories. Some are simply seekers of meaning, community, justice, and peace. You are all welcome here today. In all the beauty of languages, cultures, and skin tones that come together in your uniqueness, in all the ways you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. In the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. With all the religious and ethical traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here. Whether you come feeling whole, feeling broken, or anywhere in between, you are welcome here. No matter how long you've been away, nor how soon you will return, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today. I especially welcome any newcomers today. Each Sunday is a little different here, so please come back a few times to get to know us. All right, now put away your devices, set aside the newspaper, or any other distractions. Let's practice being present as we enter our time together. Let's light our chalices together to start as I read these words from Natalie Fenimore, who's currently a minister at the UU Church in Manhasset, New York. Unitarian Universalism is a big faith, and we have a big message, that there is one spirit of life that moves in and within all of us and calls us to care for each other. Our faith celebrates the beauty, diversity, and goodness of all creation, of all life. We believe in love and compassion for all, and in using our best learning to make the best choices we can. Our opening hymn from the Gray Hymnal is hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Lives.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build a common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its reward, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For for all that is our life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build a common good and make our own days glad.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I wanted to share a story about worship, UU style, which is a little different than the way that worship may be envisioned or carried out in other faith traditions. So our story today is called Worship at Camp Taylor. Ricardo and his grandparents arrived at Camp Taylor for the congregation's weekly retreat. This was Ricardo's third year at the retreat, and he had been looking forward to this weekend for months. He helped bring the bags to their cabin. Then he looked all over for his friends Abby and Kamal, but they had not arrived yet. Instead, he found his grandfather in the large group kitchen. "Time will pass faster if you keep busy," his grandfather said, and he asked Ricardo to help him place bread in baskets for Friday night's dinner. Grandfather was right. Time did move faster when you kept busy. In fact, Ricardo was busy all weekend. When he wasn't playing with his friends, he helped prepare meals and clean up after activities. At Saturday's lunch, the minister, Reverend Hendricks, sat by Ricardo. "Ricardo, you're being really helpful this weekend. I like to see such leadership in the children of the congregation." "Leadership?" said Ricardo. "Sure," said Reverend Hendricks. "Leadership doesn't only mean being the person in charge. Pitching in where help is needed is leadership too. I need such a young person to help with tomorrow's worship service. Would you like to help?" "Sure," said Ricardo, though he wasn't sure how he could help. What did he know about creating worship? That night, the worship planning team met. Reverend Hendricks explained that they would keep the planned components short in order to leave plenty of room for people to share. The theme for the service was All Together Now. She used newsprint to list the parts of the worship service. "When we gather together at the pond, people will come from all over. Let's gather people with a song that some people know and that the others can learn quickly," she said. "How about Come, Come, Whoever You Are?" asked Ricardo. "We learned that one in RE, and we sing it a lot on Sunday mornings." Everyone liked that idea. Someone wrote the title of the song on the newsprint. Another member of the team suggested that they open with a chalice lighting. Ricardo was surprised, although then he didn't realize why he would be surprised, to see that someone had actually brought a chalice to the retreat. They knew it would be needed because all the worship services at the congregation start with a chalice lighting, of course. More ideas for the worship service were added on the newsprint, including 2 more hymns and a meditation led by one of the congregation's elders. "Will you give a sermon?" Ricardo asked Reverend Hendricks. "Not this time," said Reverend Hendricks. "Alex has prepared a short sermon." Alex was a college student who was new to the congregation. Ricardo was surprised that someone besides a minister could give a sermon, especially someone almost as young as himself. "At the end of my sermon, I'll invite anyone who wishes to say a few words about what coming together at this retreat means to them. Instead of our usual joys and concerns, this is what we'll ask participants to give during this service," said Alex. Ricardo liked that a lot. He thought everyone would be able to participate this way. The next morning, Ricardo went to the pond in time to start singing Come, Come, Whoever You Are, exactly at 10 o'clock with the other worship planners. As more people arrived, they quickly joined in. Some brought chairs and blankets, and others just sat on the grass. Reverend Hendricks placed the chalice on a large stone. Different people led the group through the different parts of the worship service. The songs were so easy that no hymn books were needed. Then Alex stood up to give a sermon. Ricardo was surprised to realize that Alex was talking about him. Because we all took time to be here together, said Alex, I received some amazing gifts this weekend. One of these gifts was the special time I got to spend with my young friend Ricardo this morning and planning the worship together. After Alex finished speaking, it was time for people to share what this retreat meant for them. One person said, taking time away from the busyness of our everyday lives allowed me to just be right here in the moment without thinking about where I have to go and what I need to do next. I feel refreshed and renewed. A parent said, I got to spend more time with my children this weekend than I have for months. An elder said, I almost didn't come. I thought the retreat was only for families with kids, but some of you encouraged me to be here, and I'm so glad that I did. I got to know people better. We shared many stories. Young and old people should talk together more often. Ricardo had thought that worshiping in the woods would be strange and complicated, but actually it was easy. It turned out they didn't need any hymn books or an altar, just people willing to share what was important to them with each other in the spirit of love and togetherness. That is what worship is. After the closing words, Ricardo extinguished the chalice. It was time to go home. Thank you so much for sharing this story with me. I hope that it informs what we think of as worship and what it requires to have our special time together. Turns out it isn't that much. Take care and have a great week.
Thank you, Adrienne. That was so spot on. No, it doesn't take much, but it does take the focus, which I think that story talked about, which is, I think, a little more challenging today in virtual church. As we've been talking about today, we are gathered to contemplate our faith and to consider what it is we do here each Sunday, what we call worship. We know that there is a rhythm that is created in worship when weaving together music, words, silence, ritual, and community. It is intentional that we try to use rhythm and ritual to create a sense of familiarity. Perhaps this helps access some of our unconscious thought processes that perhaps help us find our best selves. As we ponder why we love Sunday worship, let us also consider the deep love we feel for this community. We come here to be together in our non-judgmental religious home that accepts us and supports us wherever we may be in life's journey. To that end, each Sunday we set aside time to reflect on the joys and sorrows in our lives and in the life of this gathered community. We will enter into a time of meditation, contemplation, and prayer. Although we have no specific joys and concerns from the community today, I would like us to send our best thoughts to the people of Colorado and all the first responders there facing cataclysmic fires. We should also pull out our best prayers or perhaps pleads to Mother Nature for our area to keep the forecasted winds down to avoid any new fires breaking out. And finally, I'd like to send my thoughts and prayers to all the poll workers and local law enforcement across the country who are seeking to keep all workers and all voters safe. Before we take a moment for prayer and reflection, I'd like to share these words from Susan Magin. It's called Call from Beyond. From beyond the playful summer clouds, beyond the earth's thin blue line, far beyond the bright moon and the meteor showers, we hear the call to look and listen carefully, to turn away from a world that buys and sells happiness, to fully experience the luring whisper of your heart's truth. Why not today? Why not now? We are here and together at home in this evolving place, home in this ever-changing breath and body, home in this dewy morning, even as it reaches toward a high, hot noon. We hear the call from far beyond and deep within, and we do not hear it alone. I now invite you into a shared time and space of meditation, prayer, and reflection.
To see our world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a world found. Oh, infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. To see the world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a world found. Oh, infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. And eternity in an
Night. It's so great to see everyone here today. Good morning. I would like to share my reflection on worship. Today we are reflecting on what it means to worship and what the worship services that we come together for each week mean to us. Not long ago, when I mentioned to a non-UU friend that I was the chairperson for our worship committee, she asked, "What do you worship?" I felt very stumped. I could not answer her in the moment, and I began to question that very thing. What do I worship? How and why do I worship? And what does that word actually mean? I recalled that some years back, I attended a worship service in New York that was called a celebration service, and another one that was called a fellowship service, while ours here at SFUU is called worship service. Words have important and nuanced meaning. I even brought this up as a topic for discussion at our worship committee. In the dictionary, worship is defined as a feeling or expression of reverence and adoration for a deity. And as an atheist, this word left me feeling a bit uncomfortable. Joan Lactus, who has long served on the worship committee and as a worship leader and associate, shared with our worship committee the origin of this word in the Old English, and I would like to share this with you now. Worship comes from the Old English word weorthskype. I don't know if I said that right, but weorthskype, which takes the concept of worth and combines it with the concept of shape. Worship helps people, both individuals and communities, to take what is worthy and give it shape. To me, this is like cultivating love and compassion and creating an intention to live life that embodies these qualities. Ideally, Worship seeks to help clarify and integrate two things: an individual's calling or a knowing of what they can contribute to the world, and an awareness or understanding of what the world needs. The activity of worship helps us to grow in awareness, clarity, compassion, and leadership. It helps us to be the best human beings we can be, whether that means the best individual, the best parent, the best family member, the best spouse or partner, the best community member, or the best carrier of goodwill into the world. When I began attending SFUU about 7 years ago, I was coming from a background where sitting in Catholic Mass each week was a kind of torture for a child. Later in my adult years, I realized that there was so much more to spirituality than sitting in Mass. When I began attending SFUU, I was immediately attracted to the sacred space here, created here, and its members, and the creative and inspiring worship services. As we say, I had found a spiritual home where I could undertake the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, as stated in our SFUU principles. Over time, I was invited to share a reflection at one of our services. I was pretty nervous. Mostly I was nervous that I would start bawling from the pulpit. I am a big crier. I cry not so much at sad things. Mostly I cry at the touching and beautiful things, those moments of grace. This is what makes me cry, and there are always so many of those moments in our services. Each one is a gift. It has been very gratifying to be a part of the creative and spiritual team of SFUU and share ideas and inspirations for services each week. So the time and the attention that we come together each week to share can be thought of as a shaping of the worthiness of our intentions, our words, and our actions. It seems like a lovely reason to worship here together at SFUU. So thanks. And now we will transition to our offering. Generosity is a spiritual practice of this congregation. When we offer our time and our talents and our treasure, we deepen our engagement and become part of building the beloved community here together. As part of our ethic of generosity, we also split our collection plate with a local community organization aligned with our values each week. And this month, the Share the Plate recipient is the Auburn Interfaith Food Closet. To support them and SFUU today, you can follow the link in the chat or navigate to our website, mysfuu.org, and click Give to SFUU. Here you can donate to SFUU at any time for our Share the Plate program, or directly for the SFUU to pay your monthly pledge. You can also download the app Give Plus Mobile, where all you'll have to do is create an account, put in the zip code, and select SFUU to give. Instructions and links are at the bottom of the Give page at mysfuu.org. And as always, you can mail your donations the old-fashioned way. Pledges can be mailed directly to our church at 190 Finley Street. If this is your first time visiting us, please know that you are our valued guest and there is no expectation for you to contribute.
When taking up the subject of worship, I like to remember the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, quoted from reading number 563 in the UU hymnal. He says, "A person will worship something, have no doubt about that. We may think our tribute is paid in secret, in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will out. That which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship, for what we are worshiping, we are becoming." Grammatically, we often use the word worship as a noun, how we engage in communal religious practice, or more typically in our congregation, the actual conduct of a religious service. But I want to focus more on worship as a verb. My dictionary defines worship first as a transitive verb, to honor or show reverence for as a divine being or supernatural power, or to regard with great or extravagant respect, honor, or devotion. As an intransitive verb, it is defined as performing or taking part in worship or an act of worship. I think the most common use of the word worship in connection with religious practice is as the transitive verb. As Emerson says, a person will worship something. As you use, can we say what we are worshiping? Well, this gets back to the issue that Meg was talking about. How many of us are comfortable in saying we worship anything? Would some of the humanists or atheists in our midst want to admit to worshiping anything? Maybe Emerson is wrong, and we can engage in religious worship without actually having an object of worship. But I tend to think he is right, and it behooves us to examine what dominates our imaginations and thoughts, to use his words, and consider whether we are shaping our lives appropriately with our true objects of worship. I believe my Christian friends would almost unanimously affirm that they worship God. And actually I do too, even though I count myself as a Buddhist, and Buddhism is a non-theistic religion. However, I would probably disagree with most Christians in my conception of God's attributes. Buddhists tend to say they do not worship the Buddha, they venerate the Buddha. This is an important distinction, but in some popular Buddhist practice, it may seem like a distinction without a difference, hearkening back to our quote from Emerson. My core spiritual practice is meditation, and I see Buddhist silent meditation practice not so much as a mental discipline, but rather as a sacred activity I call worship, engaging the mind, the body, and the heart all together. This is a kind of worship that can be conducted in solitude or in community, with or without associated rituals, such as bowing and chanting. I think a sense of the sacred is an important aspect of worship, which can connect us with the fundamental beauty and mystery of life and death, joy and sorrow, love and loss. Sometimes it seems to me that UUs are mostly worshiping social and personal aspirations, such as community, justice, democracy, and the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Admirable and desirable as these are, I'm not convinced they are the best objects of worship, and one or a sense of the sacred is sometimes missing. Honoring what has emerged as UU tradition, I don't intend to offer any definitive answers, but urge you instead to ponder the questions. Perhaps it's really true that the flaming question mark is a better symbol of Unitarian Universalism than the flaming chalice. Finally, I would say our worship at SFUU is at its best when it succeeds in celebrating the beauty and sacred character of our human experience, along with the intimacy that comes from telling our personal stories and the sense of community from doing all of this together. Hearing beautiful music and singing together can help to set the tone. Our current need to hold services virtually creates real challenges for bringing in music over the internet. We can't just hear ourselves singing together as a congregation. On the other hand, it does highlight our ability to speak personally and intimately from our hearts. Thank you.
This is called The Summer Day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper. I mean the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats far away. I don't know exactly what prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle, how to be blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
Hello. Growing up, my family never went to church. And I do not believe I have ever worshiped like you'd expect, considering how deeply involved I am at church. As Meg and Jim noted before, having been a UU for many years may not be considered worship by people of other faiths. And I don't believe in capital G God. To prostrate myself before a perceived deity or an idol seems foreign and strange, even though I have seen it demonstrated throughout my life. I have no interest in the pomp and circumstance, the rituals. I understand it means something, maybe everything to some people, but it seems the same to me as watching theater. It is art. It can be beautiful, powerful even, but also staged and distant. I only went to church when I was very young with my grandmother, Nana, on occasion. It was just an excuse to hang out with her, to garner goodwill. Nobody else would go with her. And it made her really happy when I came along. But it also sounded like a better idea than it ever turned out to be. The large Catholic parish she attended had high ceilings that resonated with the choral music. That was nice. And I liked the way that everyone knew exactly how and when to respond in unison to the priest. But I would inevitably get bored and would feel trapped, and literally and figuratively, in the long pews and count the minutes to leave. And the up and down, I would never do it right, and would inevitably get swatted because my mind had wandered and I missed the cue to kneel. When I joined the UU church in 7th grade, I rarely went to Sunday services. I went to religious education classes on Sunday mornings or Wednesday evenings, or hung out in the social hall, helped to serve coffee, And when I did venture into the sanctuary to hear a sermon in that UU church of the 80s, it felt a lot more like a university lecture than what I had seen with Nana. We did work hard in those days to find worshipful space that satisfied the youth. At UU camp, we had worship every night and often included rituals of meditation or movement that was appealing even to my already agnostic self. The closest I have ever felt to God was a spiral dance where several nights of little sleep resulted in an otherworldly haze as we circled round and round. The purpose, to bring snow to the drought-plagued San Bernardino Mountains, was successful, and seeing the white ground the next morning absolutely reinforced that emotional and spiritual connection. But in retrospect, it was probably more exhaustion than religious enlightenment. So all that said, why have I been going to church to worship more Sundays than not for the last 30 years? I truthfully cannot explain why. I think that is why I started getting involved with building, writing, evaluating, and supporting worship. I was looking for meaning making. Maybe if I knew how the sausage was made, maybe I would better understand what it was that fulfilled me. I had done the yearly RE services and occasionally helped at youth conferences or camps, but it was my then boyfriend, Jeff. Yes, I met Jeff at church, who was often in the pulpit, and his great minister that had mentored him, that brought me to being a worship associate and ultimately a worship leader. The process of seeing the connection between the component parts and between different trusted fellow congregants' points of view on a similar topic is a great way to build worshipful understanding. It definitely has connected worship as a player rather than just an audience member in the art that is Sunday morning service. Susan Mankerseal, that minister, also preached a worship of the outdoors and a true belief in what she deemed recreational ministry, where we worship by cooking together, playing together, sitting in silence or singing around the fire, being in the outdoors together. And in this situation, I had my only other noted spiritual experience in our 100-acre community-owned camp, Saura, with 2 U's, of course, where we could communally build our Sunday worships outside in what we called the Grove of the Ancients. Giant old growth pinions and oaks and junipers in a circle, conveniently. And without much group planning, we each brought our own spiritual connections to this beautiful place, this amazing community, and it was as if we had spent hours coordinating. After spending a long weekend communing, our spirits were in tune with each other, and after an hour of music, speaking, dancing, and feeling each other's presence, we were all in silent tears. Maybe I worship the great minds and hearts of my peers that call me to be my best self. That's a good reason to come on Sundays and help out. So I continue. It doesn't give me all the answers, but I get what I need here. Would I call this worship with no greater power? I don't know. But when I have been in UU congregations that have considered calling it anything else, I have bristled at the thought. Salon, conversation, celebration. Nope, nope, nope. Assembly, society. That sounds like an event I probably cut in high school. Meeting works for the Quakers, but still sounds a little too much like business. I fear to call it anything other than worship diminishes its importance, makes it lesser than adherence of other religions' spiritual practices. And that's not okay. This is important. Sunday at the UU congregation is where I focus my energy, where I am called to action, to support my own and my community's spiritual and moral growth. It is where I find strength to soldier on when I am low or frustrated or tired. Maybe there is no call and response. Maybe there's no incense or dancing. In my case, there isn't even prayer. But it definitely is a place where I feel sanctuary, where I can slow down and focus on what is important. Is that worship? I don't know. But I definitely don't have a better term to describe it. And like with so much else in my spiritual life, I think I'm okay living with the mystery. Thank you.
Wow. All right, so pre-COVID, I would be walking over to you on the pulpit and giving you a huge hug. So that was fantastic. Thank you. Our closing hymn is hymn number 1060, As We Sing.
As we sing of hope and joy today, some know only anguish and despair. How can we live
As we leave this community of spirit, may we remember the difficult lesson that each day offers more things than we can do. May we do what needs to be done, postpone what does not, and be at peace with what we can be and can do. Therefore, may we learn to separate that which matters most and that which matters least of all. If you haven't already, please extinguish your chalice and join us in our closing words. As we go forth, may we carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Blessed be.